What if the biggest illusion created by the ego isn't that you're separate from other people, but that you're separate from yourself? Think about that for a moment. Most people assume the ego's greatest trick is convincing us that we're important, or special, or superior. But those are only surface-level expressions. Underneath them lies a much deeper illusion, one so fundamental that it shapes nearly every thought, emotion, fear, desire, and conflict in your life. And the strange part is this: the illusion feels completely real. In fact, it feels so real that most people never question it. Yet the moment you see through it, something remarkable begins to happen. The need to validate your worth through achievement begins to dissolve, and a sense of freedom begins to emerge, because you've finally recognized something that was never true to begin with. Welcome to Mystic Reflections. Today we're exploring the insight that reveals the ego's greatest illusion. And once you see it clearly, you may never look at yourself the same way again. The ego's hidden assumption. Most discussions about the ego focus on behavior, pride, defensiveness, comparison, the need to be right. But these are symptoms, not the root. The ego operates from a single hidden assumption, that there is a separate psychological self at the center of experience, a permanent me who owns every thought, a permanent me who controls every emotion, a permanent me who must constantly defend, improve, protect, and complete itself. Because of this assumption, life becomes a never-ending project. You must become better, more successful, more spiritual, more respected, more awakened. And every achievement provides temporary relief before the search begins again. Why? Because the ego isn't actually searching for fulfillment. It's searching for confirmation. It wants evidence that the separate self it believes itself to be is real. And that's where the illusion begins. The strange discovery most people miss. Here's a simple question. Did you choose your next thought before it appeared? Most people immediately assume they did. But look closely. A thought arises, then another, then another. Where exactly did they come from? You may influence your thinking. You may direct attention. But can you honestly predict your next thought before it arrives? For most people, the answer is no. Thoughts simply appear within awareness. The same is true for emotions. A feeling emerges: excitement, anxiety, joy, frustration. They arise, linger for a while, and eventually fade away. Yet the ego immediately claims ownership. My thought, my feeling, my experience. And this automatic claiming creates the sense of a solid self behind everything. But what if that feeling of ownership is itself another mental construction? What if the self you believe is doing all the thinking is actually being created by thought? This is where things become interesting. The ego's greatest illusion. The ego's greatest illusion is not arrogance, it's identification. Specifically, identification with the contents of consciousness. Thoughts appear. The ego says, "That's me." Emotions appear. The ego says, "That's me too." Memories appear. Again, "That's me." Eventually, awareness becomes so entangled with these experiences that we stop noticing the difference between the observer and what is being observed. Imagine watching a movie for so long that you forget you're sitting in a theater. You become completely absorbed in the story. The ego functions in a similar way. It pulls awareness into a continuous narrative about who you are, your past, your future, your successes, your failures, your fears, your ambitions. And after years of listening to that story, we begin to mistake the story for ourselves. That's the illusion. Not that the story exists, but that the story is what you are. The insight that changes everything. The insight is surprisingly simple. You are aware of your thoughts. Therefore, you cannot be the thoughts themselves. You are aware of your emotions. Therefore, you cannot be the emotions themselves. You are aware of your self-image. Therefore, you cannot be limited to the self-image. The observer and the observed are not the same thing. The moment this becomes more than an intellectual idea, when it becomes a direct experience, something shifts. You begin noticing thoughts without immediately becoming them. Emotions can move through you without defining you. Fear may still arise. Anger may still arise. Even egoic patterns may still arise. But they no longer possess the same authority, because you've discovered that awareness itself remains untouched by whatever appears within it, and that changes your relationship with everything. Living beyond the illusion. Seeing through the illusion doesn't mean the ego disappears overnight. Life continues, responsibilities remain, personality remains. You still have preferences, goals, and opinions. The difference is that they become tools rather than identities. You stop carrying the exhausting burden of constantly defending a psychological image of yourself. You become less reactive, less trapped by old stories, less dependent on external validation, and perhaps most importantly, you become more present. Because when attention is no longer consumed by protecting an imaginary self, it naturally returns to the reality of this moment. This is why so many spiritual traditions point toward awareness itself, not because awareness gives you something, but because it reveals what was never actually there. The separate self that seemed so solid begins to be recognized as a process rather than an entity, a story rather than a fixed identity, and in that recognition, a surprising freedom emerges. Final reflection. The ego's greatest illusion isn't that it makes you think you're important. It's that it convinces you that you are the story constantly unfolding inside your mind. The insight that reveals this illusion is simple but profound. You can observe every thought, every emotion, every belief, and every self-image that appears, which means none of them can be the deepest truth of what you are. And perhaps awakening doesn't begin when you find a better story. Perhaps it begins when you finally stop mistaking the story for yourself. If you enjoyed this exploration, consider subscribing to Mystic Reflections for more insights into consciousness, self-discovery, and spiritual awakening. And until next time, remain curious, remain present, and keep looking beyond the illusion.